And we're live as well.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Gary Dyke, and I'm the Chief Administrative Officer for the Municipality of North Grenville. And tonight's session is the first of our public engagement sessions where our intent is to present an overview of what we've called the 2021 staff recommended budget for the Municipality of North Grenville. Purpose of tonight is to provide information, to solicit any comments, questions we have from members of the public as part of our process going forward for the final adoption of the municipality's budget. Any information we gather tonight or over the next couple of days will be part of the submission package when we make the formal budget presentation for consideration to council next Tuesday, February 2nd. You can look on our webpage to see how to register for that meeting. We encourage all members of the public to register to participate in the process as the budget moves forward. This meeting in non-COVID times would be a series of public meetings held within the community. However, unfortunately, on the restrictions we're under, we'll be doing these virtually for tonight and possibly tomorrow if registration warrants for one tomorrow as well. The budget that will be presented to you tonight is what we've started calling and we've determined to be as a bit of a transition budget for us here in North Grenville. It's implementing a number of the organizational and policy changes we've made over the past year for all of 2020 as we, through the support and direction of council, move towards modernization of not only our operations, but the service delivery methodologies of the municipality. We're looking at ways of, this budget looks at ways of reinvesting within the operations municipality. It addresses staffing gaps within the municipality, as well as the modernization efforts of us as we move forward to provide a better level of service, but also to keep up with the rapid growth of the municipality to meet the needs, not only our existing citizens, but the future people coming to our community as well. But the budget also recognizes the burdens that COVID-19 has placed on our community, our business and community going forward. And Mr. Brookman, as he presents in details, will talk about how we recognize that within the budget itself, as we move forward. This council was very proactive over the course of 2020 in responding fiscally to COVID-19. The changes that we put in place and the COVID relief fund put in place allowed us to transition smoothly and adjust to the impacts we felt over 2020. So there is not a detrimental impact on the 2021 budget as we go forward. The new budget and the new process we've been able to put in place creates greater levels of fiscal responsibility and accountability, as well as I mentioned before, significant areas of modernization in our fiscal systems, the areas of forecasting and trending, capital investment priorities and implementation, risk management, strategic spending analysis, and really working towards identifying a return on our investment for the services we provide to the committee, and not necessarily in a traditional monetary way, but on a service level way and community or customer impact for people that deal with and live within the community. And so with that high level overview, I think it's important now that I turn it over to Brad Brookman, the city's new treasurer, to present the budget to you. I think it's important to note one of the challenges we faced, and I should have mentioned it earlier, is that a lot of transitions happened in this municipality in the past year. I think just from an administrative standpoint, in the past 12 months, the municipality now has a new chief administrative officer, a new treasurer, a new deputy treasurer, a new clerk, a municipal solicitor, and a new director of planning. And so that's 80% of the senior management municipality is turned over, and all that is culminated in the new process you're about to see, and that will evolve over the coming months. Brad?
Thanks, Gary. So I'm Brad Brookman. I've just joined the municipality about 6 months ago. Gary brought me in. Happy to be part of the team. I'm also a new resident of Kempville. I just bought a place on the Rideau in May, so I'm happy to be here as part of the community. I'm happy to be part of this process and looking forward to 2021. With that, we'll get the presentation started. And on to the agenda. So I'm just going to walk you through a little bit of a summary of what we did in 2020. It was certainly a busy 6 months for me, a busy year for the municipality, resetting, as Gary said, and setting a base for the way that we're going to run things in 2021. I'm going to go through 2021, what we have planned there. Then I'm going to walk you through the operating budget, including our larger funding agencies such as the library, OPP, a little bit on the business BIA, and the capital budget. So that's the general operations of the municipality. We'll walk through all of that. Then we're going to walk through the water and wastewater budget. It's part of the municipality budget. However, it doesn't impact taxes. It is self-funded. And we'll explain how that works. But basically, user fees pay for everything for the water and wastewater budget. And I'm going to walk you through what that means and what we have planned. The big item there, of course, being the expansion of the wastewater treatment plant. Once we've gone through the entire budget, I'm going to give you a little overview of how your tax rate is calculated, so we understand a little bit better where your taxes come from, how they're generated, and what the process is. And then I'm not going to walk through in great detail through the appendices, but this is part of the transparency and improvements of our process that Gary was indicating. I'll walk through our community grant requests process. We have a number of community grant requests that came in that was reviewed last week. I'm going to look at our operating budget by department. So again, showing by department, instead of having all of our administrative costs going through one large department, we've broken this down. We've restructured ourselves to be more accountable and show council and the public what we've got planned, what we have budgeted, and how we're doing against that budget. And then I'll walk through our capital projects. I'm going to show you where we're at in terms of 2021, all of the carryover projects because of 2020 and the COVID impact. A lot of projects that were planned for 2020 are now moved into 2021. So we'll go through those as well as new projects for 2021. Next slide. So 2020 was a busy year. We have, of course, COVID-19. That was our number one issue or challenge for the year. We had to cut back on our physical presence at the main office, and we also had to back off on some of our capital projects. Now that was due to the direction of the council. Council directed us to make sure that we could withstand the impact of COVID-19 and still provide the service to the community that it needs. I think we had a pretty good, successful approach to that, and that basically has put us in a good place to step forward in 2021. Gary already mentioned we have a new CAO and senior management team, new organizational structure. I just mentioned the capital spending deferrals, and we're going to talk a little bit about reserve funding and DC planning. That's development credits planning. That is really about making sure we have enough money for the growth that's occurring in the municipality. So we're a growing community. We've been doing very well in terms of influx of people, but we want to make sure that we're planning that appropriately, that we make sure we understand how we're going to fund that, and we're actually looking ahead, not just a year or two, but up to 10 or 20 years. So that was all part of our review for 2020, getting prepared for 2021. And we started establishing a new baseline. So what that means is we've restructured, we've reinvested, and we're going to do a great job of planning our expenditures, controlling our budget, reporting on a quarterly basis to council how we're doing against that plan, and moving this municipality forward. Next slide. So some of the highlights from 2020, we had a COVID testing facility set up on campus, which is very proactive. It was well received, and importantly, I think it was an indicator to the government, to the provincial government, that we're invested. So when we applied for phase 2 COVID funding, we were awarded $987,000, $900,000 for 2000 and 87,000 for 2020 and 87,000 for 2021. So anything that wasn't used in 2020 is available to be used in 2021. However, we have spent most of the funding that we received in 2020 for that period. We've hired a dedicated grants or funding research analyst. So historically, or certainly from what I've seen, we didn't have the resources or capability to go after that type of funding. So as you can see, if you do apply, you can receive those rewards, and we're going to do so through 2021. We've hired a dedicated resource for that, and she's already, I would say, more than paid for herself. We improved our community service. So when I arrived about 6 months ago, we had one person at the front desk, and she was struggling to keep up. There was just a lot of community requests coming in. We've since added another staff member to the front desk. We moved the front desk downstairs, and that's actually been well received. So many of our requests don't need to go up if you've been to the main office, up the many stairs to get to the service desk. And I'll talk about 2021 and moving forward, but we're thinking about moving that down there permanently. Gary touched on process modernization. So we're investing in the municipality. We've updated our software, we updated our hardware, and we secured the internet. All of those were running behind. They were out of date. So over the last 4 to 6 months, we've replaced our internet hubs. We've upgraded our software in terms of office software, and we're now up to date. So we were struggling with things like virtual presentations like this, and now we're doing quite well. Once we got up to date, the next step, of course, was to think about, okay, how do we plan so we don't fall behind again? So we've engaged a third-party service provider to look at our IT planning, provide some advice and guidance, and a security review. Make sure that the information at the municipality head office is secure and properly maintained. And then we started a continuous improvement cycle. So we reset everything that we're doing in terms of our process and our planning, and now we're starting to move into that continuous improvement cycle, and 2021 is going to be part of that. One of the big things that you're going to see coming into 2020 is our improvement in planning and accountability. Gary already touched on hiring some experienced senior management team members with that large turnover of nearly 80% of our senior management team, and we brought in our municipal solicitor, myself, my deputy, dedicated human resources specialist. We're ready to go, and we're ready to execute on 2021. And then the last thing that we did in 2020 is what you're seeing today, which is a culmination of zero-based budgeting. Now, we haven't gotten fully into this because I've only been here 6 months, and we need to start this earlier in the year. But it's really about planning from what our expenditure requirements are and creating a budget from that, instead of going, well, this is what we spent last year, let's add 2% and spend that. So it's just a more rigorous way to do our budgeting. Next slide. So the way forward for 2021, we're going to continue with our service improvements. We're going to maintain our customer service standards. We certainly have improved that. Certainly from the feedback we've gotten from the community is that we're getting faster responses. People are getting the answers they want in a timely manner. So we're going to permanently relocate the customer service desk to the main floor, and we're going to improve our online services. So again, that's part of that IT investment. Continued modernization is not just systems improvement, but that's going to be what supports us. So our systems improvements are going to include implementing a building and planning software to make our responsiveness quicker, our effectiveness more capable, just more effective in general, and make us better at planning. And we're going to buy some procurement software, which means that when we're buying for the municipality, we're doing so as a cost-effective manner as we can. So having that capability in the background is huge for saving costs and increasing our capabilities. Improved planning. So Gary already touched on this. We have a strategic plan developed for 2020, or that's going to be developed for 2022. That's going to come out of the CAO's office. We're going to do better at capital expenditure planning. So that is required. By the way, the provincial government has mandated that we do that. Our asset management plan, we have a dedicated resource for doing asset management planning. But we're gonna increase the rigor on that. We're going to improve that. And as I said, we were looking maybe a few years out in the past, but we need to start planning 10, 20 years out for growth and development, making sure that we have the capital resources available. And if we don't, we have to look at sources of funding, not just through taxation, but through other sources such as lending. Along with that is going to come improved transparency. So you're going to be able to see what our capital projects are. If we get the right software, you might even be able to see where we have them planned. So that's all in the pipeline. It's going to be developed in 2021 and should give both council and our community the ability to see where we're going and how we're doing on our plan. And then the piece for me is the budgeting and performance software. So we're going to do quarterly performance, including trend analysis. So that means looking forward instead of looking backwards. We coming to the end of the year and saying this is how we did is part of the process. But a better process is looking at this on a quarterly basis and saying, okay, here's what we plan to do in the first quarter. How are we doing? So you need some sort of support system for that. We don't currently have it. We will be going to tender for it shortly. And we're going to be able to show both council and the public how we're doing, where we're going, and what we expect for the future. Along with that is an update on our reserve funding strategy. We have reserves set aside, which have been growing over the last 4 or 5 years, which is great, but we need some strategy around how we're going to use those funds. And then finally, the introduction of a risk management program. So that's really looking at how we're doing at everything from the cost of resources such as fuel and electricity and how that's going to impact us, planning for that so we understand the increase in operational costs, but also looking at if we're going to take on a project, what kind of impact does that have on the community? What is the likelihood that that's going to make a difference? Looking at projects from that perspective means that we can pick the highest impact projects and work on those first, and then make our way through the other list of things that continually grows and is required to keep a healthy municipality. Next slide. So I just wanted to walk through quickly what goes into the budget. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the 4 main parts of a budget. I'll start in the top left with levels of service. So we look at our levels of service. That changes, of course, as we grow. But we look at our existing infrastructure. We look at our existing human resources capabilities, and we look at what the demands are, and are we meeting those demands? So are our roads up to par? Do we have enough equipment to clear the roads in the winter? Does our fire department have the proper equipment to respond to a fire? Those types of services are part of the process. We look at the human and infrastructure requirements for them, and then start building our budget from that. Internally, we get a lot of long-term planning reports, one of which is our long-term financial plan that's more specific to the budget. But we look at a number of reports that say, here's where we are today, here's where we're growing, and here's what our requirements will be over the next 5 to 10 to 20 years. So that includes asset management, which I've already touched on, building reserves, making sure that we maintain our buildings at a proper standard, and think about improvements or upgrades. And then once we understand what our requirements are in terms of the infrastructure and building requirements for the municipality, we have to look at what that costs in real dollars. So we ensure the financial sustainability for the future, and that all goes into the budget. And then the last overlay on that is our inflation and historical trends. So we start to look at our operating costs and make sure that we're adequately financed for that. And that includes the increased capital costs. A good example of that is something we're going to talk about later, which is our requirement to increase the capacity of our waste management system. So when we have all of that together, we, by department, put together what we believe is necessary for us to move the municipality forward. And then we go to this stage of the process, which is we create work plans. We're going to generate those work plans for council. We have department master plans. So by department, building department has a master plan. Public Works has a master plan to understand where we're going. And then we take that all, we put it in financial terms, and we go to the public. And that's what this engagement is today. To talk to the public, to say, okay, have we missed something? Is there something that from a public perspective needs to be addressed? And we take all of that and we'll present that to council on February 2nd. Next slide. So this is a big spreadsheet, which is a place I love to live, but many people don't. I'm not going to go through each one of the numbers, but what I'm going to do is just highlight for you our total expense. So in 2020, our budget was $21,840,000. We had a slight increase in 2021 of about 4% to $22,724,000. You'll see we show a percentage of the expenditure as an overall expenditure of total expense in the column beside that, and then our percentage growth. So year on year, are we spending more or less than we did last year? So I won't go through on this slide each one of the items, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through some of the main increases. Gary's already talked about the increase in salary and benefits due to resetting of the team and the increase in service levels provided to our community. And then of course we need to get revenue. So to pay for all this expense, our goal of course is to have a balanced budget. So if you look at the bottom line there where it says balanced budget, it zeroes out. Our revenue equals our expenses. And I'll just highlight one number, which is our tax revenue. You'll see that goes up 2%. That's purely growth. We have recommended in this budget a 0% increase from the municipality. Now that doesn't mean that we'll have zero growth, as in no additional revenue, and I'll walk through that shortly to explain how that works. One thing that I do want to highlight as well is our grants and government transfers. That is declining. So the amount of grants and government transfers we're getting historically, and that's not just this year, we're getting less money coming in from the federal and provincial government. Next slide. So just a few highlights. Salaries and employee benefits, that has gone up 1.3 million. That's due to, as Gary already highlighted, years of staffing levels not keeping up with the increase in service levels. So what we were doing is people would leave, and I'll use the front desk as an example. We used to have 3 people at the front desk. People would leave, and then we just wouldn't replace them, which is a way to save money, but it's not an effective way to provide service to the community. So you end up with a frustrated community because they can't get answers or they can't get the service they need in a timely manner. So a big part of that is increasing that service offering to the community, which has resulted in about 400,000 of the increase. So we hired about 8 people to, exactly 8 people to increase our service levels and adjust our wage and salaries to market. Contract services.
Actually, Brad, if I can just step in there a second to build on your point on the salaries pieces, because another thing we were able to do over time, as I talked previously about the need to modernize our organization. So when we brought new staff in, particularly at the senior level, we were looking for different skill sets, and what we were able to bring in were increase with bringing Mr. Brookman and Femi Ogneride in, as well as Heather Babcock-Cormier, a different skill set that brought in experience from the private sector in the areas of legal services, financial planning, audit services, and overall risk management pieces. So these are value-added pieces we brought in, as well as Brad did mention, we are reinvesting in the frontline service aspect of the organization so that we're looking to increase the service level. One of the mandates that council provided me back when I came last January was the need to increase or improve the customer or the public experience in dealing with the municipality. In order to do that, we have to have people in place to fulfill those roles. So the investment we've made has allowed that to occur. But over the longer term, what you'll find is the initial payment now will be returned through outsourcing cost reductions in areas of on the financial end and the legal side, but also in the provision of better service to the community. So I think that's important to note when we talk about that level of reinvestment back into the organization.
Thanks, Gary. Yeah, and a fantastic point. So that's our biggest increase. Our contract services have gone up $500,000, and that was driven almost entirely by the waste management contract. So if you've been following council meetings, you know that this was reassessed early in 2020, and we eventually moved forward with a RFP process, and the cost increased substantially. So those requirements, it's there. It's just that's the part of the process and the growth of the community, and that drove most of our increase on contract services. Police services, and this is no comment on the level of service received, just on the cost of the police services, was flat. It's a significant cost to the community, but their year-on-year increase was approximately zero. Next slide, please. So to pay for all of these expenses, we need revenues. So as I explained, we have 0% increase in our tax rate from the municipal level. However, we do have natural growth. So we have people moving into the community that increase our tax base. We have people that are doing additions and improvements on their properties that increase our tax rates. And in 2021, we're going to have new houses built. So that has not stopped. So that's going to increase our revenue for tax revenues by about $200,000. So that's completely driven by growth. Our user fees and charges, so that's gone up $1.1 million, mostly driven by the waste management fee increase to cover the costs of that $500,000 increase in waste management. It's actually a little bit over $500,000 in waste management increase. We have a new revenue stream coming in, which is our landfill recovery. So as we recycle, some of that, the recycling that's going out is generating some new revenue for us. And we're expecting building permits to actually increase in 2021 as we get the community working again. The only other significant point was the grants and government transfers, which I touched on briefly when I was going through the overall numbers. The government's phasing out OMPF grant funding, so we're expecting a decrease in grants. We have hired a pilot project to bring in that grants and funding analyst that I mentioned before, and we're hoping to offset that expected decrease through that program. Next slide. So one of our biggest third-party funding is of course the North Grenville Public Library. It's an important resource for the community, as it's well respected, and year on year they receive funding and really couldn't keep the doors open without support from the municipality. You'll see on the top line there, municipal grant has gone up slightly year on year. They have only asked for a slight increase in 2021, and actually following the standard set by management, they're only looking for a little over a 2% increase in 2021, which really just takes care of the cost of living. Next slide. So for 2020, just some of the highlights from the public library. Their revenues and expenditures were down due to the COVID-19 closure, but they took steps to reduce their fees, reduce their operating costs to make sure that they kept a balanced budget, and were very successful in doing that. To help the community, they suspended late fees and printing fees. and we're able to keep a balanced budget. So some good management there. They were happy to report that they still receive generous donations from friends of the North Grenville Public Library. So in spite of their curtailed capability to get out there and do some fundraising, people were still donating. So it's definitely a valued part of our community, and they're doing a great job making sure that they keep their books balanced there. For 2021, there's going to be some additional costs due to COVID-19 because as everybody's aware, it's going to continue through a good portion of 2021. So they need some additional costs for staff supplies and staff time. Their salaries are strictly a cost of living increase, and their overall ask is only 2.29%. I looked historically at what the library has asked for, and this is the lowest increase they've asked for in 5 years. So usually it's a little higher, but recognizing where the community is at, they've cut back on their budget as well. They're also looking for new revenue opportunities as the municipality is, and we'll probably we will be working with them on those opportunities. Next slide. I just wanted to highlight for everybody that the OPP budget. So the policing is a significant cost for the municipality. I'll direct you to the total 2021 estimated cost, which is $2.4 million. The way that works is they will bill us a regular amount of just around $202,000 a month. And then at year end, they true up. So if we have more activity, then there'll be an additional bill. If there's less activity, there would be a refund. So that's the process. And I figured it was prudent for our community to understand exactly what we're getting from our police department. Next. And the BIA, the Business Improvement Area. I wanted to highlight the business improvement area because they've submitted a draft budget. And just to highlight for taxpayers that this is not a taxable item. This is a business levy. So the $26,000 that the business improvement area receives is from a levy that is generated and passed through the municipality to them. So no tax consequence, but they use those funds then to manage the operations of the business improvement area. Next slide. So that's it for operating costs. That is to keep the doors open, make sure that we're planning properly, we're improving the infrastructure for the organization, for the municipality, and then we have to look at capital costs. So what do we need to invest in? So this slide breaks down for everybody by department first and then by project category where we're spending our money. So Public Works is spending the vast majority of the money, which certainly makes sense as they're responsible for roads and a good part of our infrastructure. A big part of that, of course, is County Road 43. Parks, it drops off quickly to Parks and Recreation, who's spending $1.1 million. And a big part of that is replacing some of the lighting in the Grenville Center, North Grenville Center. The NGMC building is, the 400,000 is in the NGMC building upgrades or capital projects. And then we have EPS. The vast majority of the EPS is for a new tanker truck for our fire department. So you'll see when I go into the details of that they require a new tanker. They were going to buy that in 2020, but we've delayed that due to COVID. And then others, which are itemized in the appendix, some other capital projects that are required. Overall, we need to spend around $10 million in 2021 on capital projects to continue with the improvement of the municipality. And then just to give everybody a better view, so we understand that Public Works is spending the most money, but we need to know what they're spending it on. Roads, of course, is the biggest amount that we're spending in 2021. And then we have carryover projects. I touched on that briefly. We got about $2.8 million of projects that were planned in 2020 that we, for a number of reasons, did not get across the finish line that will be done in 2021. So it's about 2.8 million. And then it drops off fairly quickly from there. I won't go through each line item, but you can have a look at the appendix to see what those capital projects are. Next slide. So draft capital funding. Sorry, capital funding. So our capital fund, we got to pay for this. So where do the funds come from? 43% of our funds come from current year taxation. So 4.2 million of our taxes collected will go into capital projects. And then we're pulling about 3 million from reserves. I'm going to touch on that shortly when we talk about the water treatment plant, or sorry, the wastewater treatment plant. But that is us planning for the future. So putting money aside for larger capital projects that we know are coming up. And we have a few of them that need to be executed in 2021 that will come from our reserve funding. Development charges are for future growth. I just wanted to highlight for everybody that development charges are there for new and incoming people into our community. So the existing tax base does not get taxed for growth and development. Our future tax base does. That's important to note because those development charges are specifically used for capital development projects, and they're set aside for that. What may happen, and what is going to happen certainly with the wastewater treatment plant, is we're going to need to finance that in advance. So you'll see 2 lines down, external debt is 0%. We're not financing anything with external debt. That's going to be true for 2021. However, in 2022, once we start getting full steam into the expansion of the wastewater treatment plant, we're going to have to look at some external debt funding. So, and then of course, the last piece of that is grants that we receive from other areas, such as the provincial and federal funding grants. And we're pulling about $500,000 out of grant funding for capital projects. So that comes to our $10 million, and that's what we've got planned for 2021. Next slide. I just wanted to highlight for everybody the 2020 carryover projects. If you've been following council, if you've been following the municipality, you will be aware that the Wellington Road project was delayed because it came in well over budget. So we wanted to come out, have a look at it, and make sure that we've planned that properly. It came in at about 1.5 million, which is significantly above what we were expecting. But we need to get it done. So we'll be carrying that over into 2021 and making sure it gets done. The next largest is the CP Rail Pedestrian Trail at about $350,000. That's just required as general maintenance and upkeep. We need to make sure that pedestrian trail is kept up, and there are requirements around that are not just for as a walking trail, but it also carries some infrastructure in it. And then everybody who's been following also knows that Wellington Road was delayed, so that's going to be moving forward in 2021. Parks and Recreation, the biggest budget item is that $400,000 that I mentioned in an earlier slide, which is taking our lighting from incandescent and other lighting methods to LED. That project has been on the docket for actually a couple of years now, and we just need to get it moving forward. It's a good capital investment because it's going to reduce our operating costs because, as I'm sure everybody knows, LED lights are just less costly to run on a year-to-year basis, and they last quite a while. So, and then EPS, the big one there is what I mentioned before, which is the tanker truck at $460,000. I have actually been over and looked at the tanker truck, and you can see that it's bubbling. And if we spring a leak, we're not going to have water. So it's time to replace that. Next. So that's our capital projects for the general operations of the municipality of North Grenville. We're now moving into the water and wastewater part of this. Again, just as a reminder, this is not tax funded. This is this is funded by user fees and charges, mostly user fees. I'll explain that on the next slide. But in late 2020, around November 2020, council passed a change in our user fee structure, which actually reduces our user fees and charges for our community, which is a good thing. But we needed internally to take that reduction in expected user fees and cut back on our costs for operating the water and wastewater plant. So we've done that. We went back, we sharpened our pens and made sure that that we could meet that requirement. And as has been historically the case, it's been well managed, and we have a balanced budget. Next slide. So just want to highlight a couple of changes that are significant. The general operating costs were decreased by 200,000, which I already mentioned is due to the decrease in user fees. We can't spend more than we pull in. So it's a small variance in other operating costs year on year. But overall, we've cut where we can and made sure that that we can run the operations efficiently and effectively, still meet the service requirements, and do so with that reduction in fees. Next slide. And I just wanted to highlight for everybody the user fees and charges. So we have to pay for our water, wastewater by charging fees for people that are using our water and wastewater services. So it represents 99% of our revenue, which is great, because that means that most of our citizens are paying their water on time. We have a very small amount of fines, penalties, and interest of around 1%. So we're doing well there. The community is supporting the water, wastewater, and paying their bills. I just want to highlight for everybody that the average annual household water utility bill for 2021 is around $1,141.44. It's a very specific number. So that actually represents an average annual decrease of $80.28 per household, or a decrease of around 6.6% over 2020, which should go a long way, or maybe not a long ways, but certainly go a ways towards helping people through this tough time with the economy. Next slide. And our capital costs. So this one I had already highlighted for us briefly when I was going through our overall budget. The big thing here is our wastewater treatment plant expansion. So we have $2.5 million in 2021. That's just getting us started. So that's going to allow us to go out there and do an RFP, get proposals in, select a vendor. We may break ground in 2021, but that would be late in 2021. We don't need to fund any of that from external sources. We can do that strictly from our development charges and our reserves. So we're in a good place there. It is a large project though, so 2022, we're going to be looking at debt financing. Again, that debt financing will be paid off over time by development charges, but we need to build it before the people come in. So as the community grows, we're predicting that we're getting close to capacity on the wastewater treatment plant. So we need to invest, build, so that we can continue to grow the community. And from that growth, we'll fund the future of the wastewater treatment plant and pay off any debt that was associated with building it before they come. The way that we're going to fund it, of course, is the three ways. It's through development charges, current year user rates, and then we'll pull from reserves just under $1 million to make sure that we get through 2021 and expect to see a big jump in this in 2022. So the two key capital projects that are impacting the water and wastewater treatment plant for 2021 are the expansion of the water treatment plant at $2.6 million. County Road 43 is impacting as well. So County Road 43 expansion, we need to spend around $330,000 on bridge crossing and another $120,000 on piping. Next slide. So that's it. So that is our budget. That's where we're spending our money. That's where the big changes are. What I wanted to walk through quickly is for our community and for council, how our municipal taxation is put together. So everybody understands that they pay their property tax, and that's a bill of, say, $2,500 or whatever it is based on what your property's assessed value is. I want to highlight here that MPAC is a third party. It has nothing to do, they're distinct from the municipality, and they do assessments of properties. That's their job, that's their role. And they've announced that they're not going to do an increase. The way that MPAC works, or the way that your property assessment works, is there's an assessed value, but it's set at a specific year. So right now, everybody who's in the municipality, their property value is set at 2016 rates. And then every 4 years, they update it. So they will assess you in what they're planning to assess you in 2021 and move your assessed rate up to 2020 standards. So what they do is back in 2016, they reassessed, and then they gave you kind of 4 years to phase in your property taxes to bring them up to speed. And then in 2020, they were going to reassess, and then they'll give you 4 years from 2020 to bring yourself up to speed at that new assessed value. They've announced there's going to be no increase, so they're going to delay that. So 2020 was supposed to be an increase year, but because of COVID and for their purposes, they've decided that it would be prudent or they've been instructed, I'm sorry, that it's prudent not to increase in 2020 on the assessed value. So it'll remain at that 2016 value. So you take that value, which is your property value, and then you multiply it by your rates. So your municipal rates, which we've proposed at 0%, plus your education rate, which we're predicting at 0%. Now, I'm not saying that it will be 0%. We haven't received a percentage increase from our education ministry. So I will, once I know that may go up. It may stay at 0, but we're predicting it at 0 for the budget process. And then the county. So you add to that the county levy. The county levy has been proposed at 1.45%. I've put that into the budget. However, it may be higher than that. It may be lower than that. It's currently not set. It's just an estimate based on information I have to date. So that's how you get to your property tax. So despite the fact that we're proposing a 0% increase, our community may see a slight increase in their taxes overall. Next slide. So I just wanted to show an example of this. So using the same average assessment value in 2020 versus 2021, the property tax rate is as presented there for 2020 versus 2021. You'll see that it goes up slightly from 11.228% to 11.281. So the average resident impact for a $400,000 property is just under $4,500. And with just the county increase estimated at 1.45%, that would be an increase in taxes of $21. So again, the proposed budget is 0%. The expected budget from the education ministry is 0%. And the expected or the estimated budget for the county is at 1.45%. So you're going to see a slight increase, but it's not going to be from the municipality. Next slide. So the next slide is really just to give our taxpayers an indication of where their tax dollars are going. So we're increasing accountability, but this is a way to demonstrate what does that mean to me. So for example, if you're paying $2,400 in taxes, $663 of that $2,400 goes to public works. So making sure that we have waste, recycling, road maintenance, engineering reports, and making sure we have that infrastructure available. We're putting money away. So $274 of the $2,400 is going to reserves so that we can plan for the future. $270 is going to our police to make sure that we have policing in the municipality, and so on. So this is just a way to show everybody where does your tax dollar go. If you have any questions on this, you can certainly give me a call. Next slide. And I'm a fan of charts. So really, this is taking the same charts that you saw on the previous slide and show you in a bar graph or more visually where your money is going. So our largest cost is public works. Our second largest cost is that planning for the future or transfer to reserves, then police, public and works, then the municipality building. And then you can see by department what the costs are. So the office of the CAO, EPS, which is our fire station, legislative services, finance and treasury, which is me, library, supporting our library, and then our other departments. So next slide. Okay, so that's it for the budget. I'm going to quickly walk through the appendix. I'm not going to go into any detail at this point. I just want to highlight what each slide is for. Last week we had community grant requests. So everybody that you see here in the applicant column came in and did a presentation to council to basically present their case for funding for 2021 for specific projects. And so they're listed here along with their request amount. And if they had received funding in 2020, that is put in the column beside that. So we have about $118,000 in requests in 2021. Council will receive those and provide guidance to us on February 2nd on what will be funded, and a decision will be made then. Next slide. Appendix B. So again, this is a lot of numbers and my happy place, which is a lot of spreadsheets. But I wanted to show the community basically by department where the expenditure is going to be. So this is again a condensed version, but it shows you where we're spending our money. We have legislative services, the Office of the CAO, emergency and protective services. We've broken out building and planning so we can understand what each one of those departments is doing. And then finance and treasury. Next slide. Public works, parks and recreation, the library, and police. So on a quarterly basis, we're going to be taking these budget numbers, we're going to break them down by quarter, and we're going to say, oh, how are we doing? Are we on budget? Are we getting the capital projects across the finish line? And are we doing the operational projects that we plan to get done? So that is an improvement in accountability and transparency, both to council and to our community, to understand where their money is going. Next slide. And this is our list of capital projects. So Public Works, of course, has the lion's share of this, but it's showing you exactly what the carryover projects were. It's showing you what we're spending on fleet and equipment. So right down to the to what we're buying. We're buying a Ford service truck. We're buying a tri-axle truck. All the things that are necessary to support the municipality are part of the budget there. And we'll be reporting throughout the year on how we're doing in terms of expenditure against those either projects or capital acquisitions. So it shows it by category. You get carryover projects, fleet and equipment, buildings, sidewalks, streetlights, and the next slide is our big one. Next slide. Roads. So you can see again, County Road 43 is $2.6 million. Wellington Road is another 500,000, and so on. So this is a tall order. We've got a lot of capital projects on the go and planned for 2021, but you can see exactly what's going to be worked on and where that money is going. Next slide. Parks and Rec is our next largest, but it's significantly less than Public Works. You can see in here exactly what the capital projects are, where we're spending our money, and what the intent is to invest in to further our service and provide the infrastructure and support that we need for the community. Next slide. And this is EPS and all our other capital projects. So EPS, I've already mentioned, I won't mention again, but I guess I will. Tanker 1 truck is being replaced at 460, which is the vast majority. But again, you can see the level of detail that we're providing to council and to the community. This is what we're spending our money on. This is what we require, and this is where you can expect your funds to go. Next slide. So that's, again, just to reinforce this, that's for the general operations of the municipality, and we're into the water and wastewater. So they have their own capital budget and they have their own capital projects. I've already highlighted the big ones here, but again, you can see detailed down to a much more granular level where you can expect money to be sent to support the infrastructure for the water and wastewater treatment plants. Next slide. And that's it. So this is the summary information. I'm certainly available to answer any questions in terms of the budget and where we're spending our money. You can expect a lot of improvements in 2021. you'll be able to follow on a quarterly basis what we're doing, how we're doing, and whether we're getting to the projects that we have planned for. With that, I'll hand it back over to Gary. And do we have any questions, Heather?
Sorry about that. No, we don't currently.
Okay. So, Gary, you're on.
Yeah, just to follow up. So the presentation tonight is available for the public, as well as other documentation, more detailed documentation upon request. Any information or any questions we receive, we'll do our best to answer as soon as we get them. And all questions that are brought forward and information requests will be made available to council. The next step in our process is the formal presentation of the staff recommended budget for consideration by council on Tuesday night. And again, similar process to this. And we strongly encourage the members of the public to participate in that process. They can register to actively participate through the clerk's office, or once again, it will be live streamed on YouTube during the council meeting itself. So if there's no questions, Heather, from...
There still isn't. I just checked my email to confirm, and there are no questions received at this point.
Okay. All right. And I believe we do have one registered guest with us today. If they had, this is an opportunity for them to ask any questions if they wish. Nope. So with that, thank everybody for their attendance tonight. And again, I'm going to strongly recommend people to participate with us on Tuesday night as council begins their deliberations on our recommendations. So with that, thanks again for your attendance, and good night.
Thank you, everybody.